I think the social corner, it's so important for our players, whether they're younger, whether they're older, you know, how they interact with each other, how they interact with new players coming into the team, how they work together at moments of adversity. I think they're all really important skills that we can start to embed in our team and in our culture. I think sometimes when we get it right, we get this really high performing team. And if it's not quite right, that can really start to affect performances.
Hello and welcome to Coaching Cards. I'm Paul Lever and I'm joined by Amanda Greenslade on my left and Nimesh Patel on my right. We're going to talk around developing the social corner through football. I'll start us off with the first question. What social skills do we want players to develop to help them in football and life outside of it? And why is it important that coaches help players with this?
I think the social corner, it's so important for our players, whether they're younger, whether they're older, you know, how they interact with each other, how they interact with new players coming into the team, how they work together at moments of adversity. I think they're all really important skills that we can start to embed in our team and in our culture. I think sometimes when we get it right, we get this really high performing team. And if it's not quite right, that can really start to affect performances.
I think for me, I'd probably go with teamwork as one in terms of some skills that they need in general life as well as just in a football environment. Another one would be leadership, so understanding at what points during football, during a coaching session or during a season, can we help some of these players with aspects of leadership, which again will help them in the future. But just touching on to what Amanda said, I'd probably say being adaptable. It would be what are the skills around being adaptable during football coaching sessions that could help them prepare them for the future.
I would add to those 2 points as well, the ability to be empathetic. I think it's really important with young players that they understand that in every group there's going to be some strivers and there's going to be some strugglers, and we have to be able to applaud and support the strivers, but also be aware of how we can help the people who are finding it quite hard. What does that look like? The way you can communicate with them, the body language, really important in developing young people.
How can coaches use training and their practice design to support the development of social skills?
It's a good question. So we have to be really clever in making sure that players get high repetition, but also they get time to breathe and think. We also get the time then to interact with them. So example on a rep circuit where they are maybe on the pitch, coming off the pitch, to go and work in the next area of the pitch. The time is to coach them and help them and support them is when they're off the pitch, so they're not losing practice time. The ability to work in small groups around interventions, making them aware that they have got to then have leaders who's going to drive the situation. You as a coach have to listen, and then maybe by clever questioning and cute questioning draw out more information from them. But in those situations, it's important that they all have a voice. So you've got to be aware of the ones who are quite shy, and then what are the strategies to help them to develop their social skills.
I think it's really important within our practice design to really set that time aside to allow the players to have those discussions, those conversations, especially if we're doing our small-sided games, to allow them to really try and solve the problems that are in front of them and be able to communicate that effectively. What formation are the opposition playing? What does that mean for us? How can we then go and help and solve the problems that they were seeing in the games? What I don't want them to do is always look to us as the coaches to help them with that game problem. I really want them to take ownership of that.
I would probably just touch on around the use of like small-sided games within practices to put players in those positions and then give them that peer-to-peer feedback like you mentioned during breaks where they might be off the pitch or on the pitch, where you can then develop some of those social skills and ask them about what's happening in terms of the game state or the game problems itself.
And a lot of our players might not go on to the professional game, and they're just such important life skills that we can bring out as coaches that might help them in future employment.
It's a really good point around, a lot of them won't go into the professional game, but the ones who go into the professional game, they're not staying in the professional game. 99% of players who go into academy systems don't play professionally. So what's our role? Because they're not making the professional game, so we've got to develop them as people. We've got to develop it in all the four areas, of which obviously the social area is massive.
How can coaches develop and encourage the use of social skills on a match day?
For me, I think it's around utilising the whole of the squad. So sometimes I'll go out and watch a grassroots coach and they've got 5 or 6 subs starting the first quarter as an example, and they'll just be sat there silently just watching. But can they actually be given a task while the game's going on to say, you're going to come on in the next quarter, you're going to provide some feedback to the players who you're going to be coming on for around what they did well, what they didn't do so well, or what they might improve on. So giving them some sort of peer task as they come on, so developing their social skills in a way that they have to give some feedback. But also a little bit wider would be around the social element of the actual whole game day. You might have a little bit of a whiteboard or a tactics board and have some information written on there around what you might be going after in the game. So some of the feedback that might be the journey on the way home from the parent is actually, I noticed on the board today that the coach put on, you were looking at your movement to go to play forward. You know, can you talk to me a little bit around that? So it's actually getting them to be specific around socially just opening up around what they may have done in the game.
It's a large area of the game because you would hope that they're looking to develop in all four corners in a logical way. So potentially what you did last week and what you did last week's game linked to this week's training, you would hope then initially that they would tell you what they might be working on, rather than the coach going straight away to, we've got these three problems, I'll sort it out and we'll move forward. No. Link back to what you've asked them to do. How have you done? And when they say, oh, I've done very well. How have we done very well? What do we ask you to do? Okay, great, that you're right there. Did anything not go so well? This, okay, why? And get them to tell you so they understand that A, they can speak in front of the peers, B, they may speak peer to peer. We can then check, challenge, support within that process. And then any issues in the game, we can solve that at the end. But we don't need more than probably one thing. You can't solve everything in every game. But really, if we're trying to develop in all four corners, we've got to give them all the opportunity to develop in all the four corners.
And just to add to that, I think one of the key drivers when you ask our players why do they play football, it comes back to they want to play football with their friends and have that social side of it and that element. So if that is a key driver for why they are there, how can we help and support that as coaches of what we're setting up? If they're there to have time and enjoy their time with their friends, having those real key social moments during the game for them to go, right, go have 5 minutes, have a bit of fun, play a little game of 1 bounce, 2 bounce, a little bit of foot tennis, having that social time for them, and then we get into our serious nature of the game day and the match day and what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think probably just to add on there, it's also the coach's role in terms of what can we help the players with in terms of helping them as a role model for some of these players. So it might be like a decision's gone against you in the game. The players might look at you as a coach, what's your response? How are you going to react to this? Coaches, we can also provide a really high level of supporting the players with these social skills on the game day, just by our own interactions.
How do you balance working on developing a player's technical skills with supporting their development in the social corner?
I think, everything works hand in hand in the sessions that we're doing, doesn't it? So you can be really supporting their technical or tactical outputs, but also having those elements of conflict resolution in a game. How do you work with your peers to, there's a situation that's happened and they need to navigate what that looks like, whether the ball's gone out it's a 50-50 and it's gone out for a throw-in. What does that look like for them of figuring out that conflict between the two players and having those social elements for it? That can be really embedded in your sessions, and it comes back to you as a coach, I think, having those routines in place and shining a light on those elements of your environment, of your culture, of going, well, this is what we do as a team. If this situation happens, this is what it looks like. We're supporting those life skills with what they're doing, but we're still getting that technical and tactical output in our sessions.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's something that I can give an example on of what I've been doing recently. So I'm working as in an assistant role as a coach, and when the lead coach is delivering a session, it might be something technical or there may be a tactical practice on. It's actually, I'm going to have a focus with 3 or 4 players around some of their IDP or individual work. So during any natural breaks or drinks breaks in the session, I might get them to talk around what were we actually looking at. Yes, this was a technical or tactical focus, but getting them to have that interaction with each other, check with each other, challenge each other around what they did well, what someone might need to improve on, can also help them in that environment of not just getting some technical, tactical outputs, but also holistically around the whole of the player.
I think the key in any 4-corner development, and we're obviously looking at the social corner, we have to plan. So if I want to develop potentially Nimesh in the social corner, it may be that he's got quite good social skills, so I try and transmit in games my messages to the players through you, and you have to tell the players. So that's an envoying type piece of work, but that can also be done in pairs, in breaks, in practices. And then again, be good at listening. So if we're going to develop the players in these areas, we have to be good listeners and then not be so anxious to give them the answer. Listen, give them another question that might be a little bit more specific so they can come up with the answer.
I think as coaches, sometimes we probably steer away from giving them advice in that sort of area of it. We hammer in the technical and the tactical advice, but sometimes we do need to put the arm around the shoulder and say how you dealt with that situation there might not have been the best, or I really liked what you did then because that really shows great leadership or communication skills. And I think it's really important that we have those interventions as well in our sessions when we're delivering.
Actually, for grassroots coaches, something that is free for them and low cost is actually just preparing some of those cards, questions or cute ideas around actually if you've played a wave practice or you've come off an area, there's something on the board or on a board there for you to think about before your next repetition. And that can actually give them that social interaction that they need to keep them focused. And it's something that grassroots coaches can do, and it's free of charge.
Can you share an example of where you've helped improve a player's social skills? What impact did it have on their enjoyment and development?
Yeah, I can give a recent example actually. So I worked with a player who's technically really high level, but socially very quite inward in terms of not maybe more of an extrovert in the group, quite shy. What we did over like the course of for 6 weeks was actually, when there was natural breaks in the practices, actually he was able to give some feedback on what he was doing to beat players. So by spinning it around his technical, tactical excellence in something, sharing something has helped him socially actually open up more with the group.
I think just to add to one that I've used with one of our players, where they're around their own peers, not confident, don't really want to communicate. So we asked her to go and help coach some of the younger age groups. And then it was just like a different player came out because they were in an environment that they felt confident. They knew that they had a little bit more knowledge than the younger players, and they were able to feed back and give some really good ideas. And it was just that little bit, like saying, that little bit of confidence to have that repetition of doing something that when they came back into their own age group for it, when they were training, that confidence they got from coaching then started to come out a little bit in their game.
And I think as a coach, we can also set that environment for players to feel comfortable to be able to open up. So I've seen it before. So if we make a mistake, and everyone makes mistakes as coaches, you know, if you put your hand up and say, oh, that was wrong, I should have done this, or you create a nice environment for the players, they then feel that they can actually open up and be reciprocated to how you are on a game day. I think that's a really big part. So grassroots coaches listening can think about, what am I showing my own behaviours that's going to help someone also open up within training sessions. So how can coaches create an environment that encourages players to build relationships and communicate effectively?
Again, that links back to a lot of planning. We're making sure that every voice counts. So making it important that in the group everyone feels able to express their opinion without fear of any reprisals. The only way we're going to learn is by making mistakes. So consequently, the more mistakes we make, the most improvement we can make. And that's very important in creating the environment. As soon as they've gone through that process, confidence will start to grow because I've created an environment where all opinions count, we're all involved. It can go wrong at times, but we're here to help. It's a supportive environment, massive to develop young people.
I think we just got to catch them when they do that well and really praise them as coaches, and then they get that sort of, oh, that was really good. So the more that we can praise them when they're doing those really good things in that feedback type sessions, the more of it that they will then go and continue to do.
Just creating the right environment for everyone involved, but setting that out at the initial start. So if you have like a meeting at the start of the season where you get your parents in and say, this is what we're going to try and go after this year, and just laying your stall out about how you want things to be, you then create that environment for players to actually develop through there, and their social skills can then come out over the season.
How can coaches work with parents and carers to develop their child's social skills?
I think, you know, our relationships with our parents are so key to help their young person thrive and develop. And I think just being able to have those really open and honest conversations both ways, from the parents to us as coaches, or us as coaches to the parents, to really discuss in detail what we think their son or daughter's strengths and weaknesses are, where do we think they might need a little bit of help, open and honesty, and then build the relationships with our parents so that you can have those really open and honest conversations.
Something that I've done is, on actually preparing game days, it's actually getting the parents to actually think about the conversation they have on the way home, gear it around a couple of words. So actually we've been looking at teamwork today, we've been looking at leadership. So your conversation on the way home, can it be geared around that, and can you provide some feedback on the way home to your son or daughter around how they got on around some of those elements? And what they can do that we can't is throughout the whole week that they're there with them and on the weekends, they can help them with some of those social skills, and it's our job to maybe just reinforce some of their messages.
When you ask the parents to feed back to the players, they'll tell them. So you've got some great ideas around teamwork, what does that look like? But they need to be able to tease that out of their youngsters. So again, it's another example of how we increase their social skills. They have to be able to communicate in a way that will show that they've understood what they've tried to get better at during the day, but they're able to verbalise that to the parents.
Do you have any top tips for coaches so that they can help their players effectively handle the emotions they may experience due to the game?
I think that emotional control and self-regulation, it's so important, and as they are developing and growing our young players, it can be something that they really struggle with. And then it's recognising that as a coach, if we might have those strategies, you know, those reset moments of, come on now, whether it's a little bit of breathing work, whether it's a little bit of they just need to high five their teammate and that's their reset to get back on it, have those moments in the games. But also I think as coaches, when we're seeing that emotional control and they're really struggling, being able to pull them out and have that moment with them of going, I can see this is now escalating, you haven't got that emotional control. And then I think it's our job as a coach to be able to step in at that point, and whether it's in a game day, bringing them off and going, I'm taking you off for this reason because I think the next tackle that you're going to put in is going to be a dangerous one, or I can see that you're really struggling with this bit and you just need a reset. So just that sort of confidence to be able to deal with those situations when they come up.
For me, it would probably just be a top tip would be to do some player profiling at any point during the season specifically around the social side of the game. So once you've got a position where you know where they're currently at in terms of a social sense around who might be confident, who might be quite shy, you can then start to actually impact them during the whole season. I think a big part of doing some of those profiling is actually linked to your observation skills as a coach. Can I see that taking place on a game day? Player might be losing their focus. What's the reason behind that? I'm going to have to maybe move them out of this scenario, but explain it to them. That way they're aware of what they're showing in terms of their emotions, but socially you're in a position where you can actually observe it to then try and help them.
What advice do you have to help coaches develop their players' social skills when working in different areas of the game? So we might talk about different age groups and what that might look like in the adult or in the junior game.
So we have a really important role in the initial stage of 5 to 11 around making sure that we set the example. So our examples of how we speak, our body language, the way we interact with each other, the way we interact with the young people is massively important. As they then got older, it's then how that we help the players or the young people interact with each other, because they become more important to them in the YDP ages or the ages 12 to 16. So we just flip the importance through the ages. That would be one way.
Right at the young ages, I think if we look at football is like a little bit of a tool, it's a driver in terms of some of those life skills. So if we know that they may not all become footballers, it's actually what can we prepare them with even just at the early stages. So things like respect, humility, those kind of things can remain true like a golden thread as they go right through the age groups.
Just to add to that, I think there's some real nuances in the female game as well. The social elements of it when you're in the female space does look a little bit different. So how the team cohesions and the social skills that happen at that is probably a little bit more influential than it is in the male game. So it's, if you are working in that female space, it's understanding that. There's a lot of research out there that talks about the differences, and knowing what you can do as a coach to help and support those areas I think is really key as well.
In the younger age, it's the age of fun. We just want to play. It's the same in YDP, but they're actually learning a little bit more, because eventually when they get to 16, 17, if they're lucky enough to be signed at an academy, which means they're now at work, we are preparing them for work. So if we don't get the basics of social psych done correctly, all we're doing is hoarding up problems for further down the line. So if we don't deal with it at FP and YDP 5 to 16, someone has to do with it. So we have to walk the talk. So if we believe in certain ideals and values of how we would hope that players develop, we have to, in tougher moments, just say, well, that's how it has to be.
I think just to sort of wrap that up, I think that life skill element around like success and failure is really important. So not everybody's going to go out of football and go and try and get a job and get every job that they go for. There's going to be elements where they're going to fail and have that element of not succeeding. So we have to prepare them for those things as well, as socially that's okay. So in our practices in training, as they go through age groups, it's okay to fail. That's a part of the game. They have to learn how to deal with that failure, which is going to help them, like you said, in the future. Otherwise, it's going to become someone else's problem.
To wrap up this discussion, it obviously is the final question. What are your quickfire top tips to help coaches develop their players' social skills? And I'll go to you, Nimesh.
I'll go with try to make sessions fun, so put them in areas where they're going to have loads of things to try and challenge their decisions, but then also has an element of enjoyment which improves the social factor of being in a session. So make sure that the sessions are fun. You know, I always say to coaches, grassroots coaches, when they're planning sessions, would you want to be in that practice? Would that be fun for you? Would you like to do that again? And if it is, you're probably going to get and elicit a good response from the players. The second thing is I'd probably want to provide some speed bumps along the journey. So during the course of a season, I want players to experience some of that failure, because I know that's a big part of a wider life in terms of the life skill.
I think mine would just be have those effective relationships with your players, your parents and everyone in your team, just to make sure that you can have those really open and honest conversations. Make sure you plan for those social times. What does that social time look like in your session? And really plan that into your structure and your schedule, so that players get those real planned moments of social time to help develop those skills. And then as a coach, being able to speak about those social skills in your sessions, how people have spoken to each other, reacted, communicated, and give them some sort of tips when they are struggling with those elements, or really catch them being good when they are doing some really good stuff in that space.
And just before Paul gives his final thoughts, one to probably add in would be around sort of celebrating like the diversity within your team. So the social, like the multi-diverse nature of the game. So can we celebrate socially different faiths, different calendars? So the FA have a faith calendar around some of those religious festivals that take place, and can we celebrate those within the team? Because again, when they go out into the general life, it's important that they have an understanding of these, but actually let's celebrate and holistically support them through the social element of different faiths across the year.
So we have to get the players to drive the process. As part of that process, there will be a lot of social interaction. We have to become more aware of the types of resources and techniques and strategies that will help the players to develop in these ways.